In this video, I'm going to tell you something that changed my life forever. I am Father Tomas Aguilar from the city of León, Nicaragua. And what you are about to hear is not just a story of survival. It is a real testament to faith, courage, and the unconditional love of the Virgin Mary. I was thrown from a bridge for publicly defending my devotion to her. And when all seemed lost, in the silence at the bottom of the river, something happened. Something that even today, I cannot explain with human words. But I know what I felt, and I want to share it with you now. So, before we begin, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss any of the next testimonies we'll be bringing here. If this story touches you in any way, leave a like. It helps us a lot. And comment below from which city or country you are watching us. It will be a joy to know how far this message is reaching. May this story speak deeply to your heart. I don't usually talk about this so easily. In fact, for a long time, I kept it all inside, like someone guarding a secret they are still trying to understand. My name is Tomas Aguilar. I have been a priest for over 40 years. I have calloused hands from carrying sacraments, worn knees from so much kneeling in prayer, and a heart that, despite its age, still gets emotional as if I had just been ordained. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what I experienced that day. It was a muggy morning in León, and I had just finished celebrating the first Mass. The city was still half asleep, with the shy sun entering through the cracked church windows. When I received the call, I didn't think twice. A woman said her brother was on the verge of death and wanted to confess. I grabbed my small satchel, the consecrated host, the oil of the sick, my rosary, and I went. The dirt road was deserted. All that could be heard was the muffled sound of the parish's old pickup truck wheels, and, occasionally, the solitary song of a lost bird. But when I saw the old truck stopped in the middle of the road, I thought it was just a mechanical problem. I slowed down, honked, stretched my neck out the window, and asked if they needed help. That's when they appeared. 3 men. 2 of them I recognized right away. They were the same ones who, days before, had been standing at the back of the church during the homily, in which I defended Our Lady with a burning heart in my chest. The third had dark, cold eyes, like someone who no longer feels anything. One of them approached the window and, with the hot breath of cigarette smoke, said softly, "We warned you, Father. You were supposed to stop talking about that woman." At that moment, I knew it wasn't a common robbery. They didn't want money, they didn't want the car, nor were they interested in intimidating. This was personal. They told me to get out, and I obeyed. I didn't try to run, I didn't scream. I knew that, at this point in my life, there was no point in fighting with my body. But my heart was at peace. One of them forcefully pushed me against the car's body. I felt the heat of the metal and the smell of oil mixed with mud. I was thrown into the back of their old pickup truck, and then the tailgate was slammed shut. The journey seemed endless. I held onto the edges with sweaty hands, and the rosary slipped through my fingers. I could only think of a phrase I always repeated to the faithful: "Evil is not overcome with hatred, but with love." But at that time, I confess, it was hard to remember that. After about 20 minutes on the road, the car slowed down. The sound of the muffled engine gave way to the sound of the wind and the noise of the water. When the truck finally stopped, my heart raced. I already knew that place. It was the bridge over the Miraculously River. Narrow, old, with cracked concrete and a rusty railing. I used to pass there to visit distant communities. I never imagined I would return to that spot, in that way. They ordered me to get out. With every step I took, I felt my body weigh more. Not because of fear, but because of the strangeness. I was lucid, aware that this could be the end, but at the same time, I felt there was something bigger there. One of them pushed me to the edge. I looked down. The river flowed strong, dirty, carrying branches and leaves as if it had no time to stop for anyone. It was then that the one who seemed to be the leader turned to me and said, "Last chance. Say here that you'll stop talking about the Virgin, and we'll let you go." In that moment, I knew there was no escape. It was as if everything around me had stopped. The sound of the river, the wind on my face, even the sky seemed heavier. I took a deep breath, looked them in the eye, and said with all the calm I could gather, "If speaking of the Mother of my Lord is reason for this, then so be it. But I will not be silent." The man who pushed me made a gesture with his head, and that was it. I felt the push in my back. It wasn't as strong as I imagined. It was dry, cold, as if he didn't even want to touch me for too long. My body fell, and for a split second, I saw the sky spin before I felt the impact of the fall. The wind cut across my face, and then the world turned to water. Everything went dark. The noise disappeared, and the cold. The cold took over me as if time itself had frozen. I don't remember exactly what I thought in the first few seconds. It was all very fast. Water entered my ears, nose, mouth. It was as if the river had swallowed me whole. I tried to swim, but my arms wouldn't respond. My old body seemed heavier down there. I sank further and further, as if I were made of stone. My lungs began to burn. It was as if the air had disappeared from the planet. I thought I would die there, in the silence underwater, without screaming, without a goodbye. But it was at that instant that it happened. A light. Blue. Soft. As if it came from inside the water, but without mixing with it. It wasn't something that was scary. On the contrary, it was a presence. I can't quite explain it. And even today, I feel a little silly trying to tell this. But I knew, deep in my soul, that it was her. The Virgin. Not with the appearance of the images in the church. It was something more real, more alive. And she was there, with me, at the bottom of the river. I wanted to say something. Anything. To thank, to ask what was happening, but my mouth wouldn't move. I was paralyzed, but not with fear. It was as if the fear had remained on the surface, and there at the bottom of the river, there was only silence. And her. The light slowly approached, illuminating everything around. Even with my eyes closed, I could see. It was a blue that I cannot compare to anything in this world. It was not the blue of the sky, nor of any mantle I had ever seen. It was as if it was made of peace. As she approached, I felt as if I was being enveloped by something warm. That's right, warm, at the bottom of an icy river. It was not the heat of a fever. It was the warmth of a presence that would not let me sink further. I still couldn't move my body, but inside, it was as if I was being pulled up. And it was at that moment that I felt a hand, or something like a hand, touch my chest. It was not a hand of flesh, nor could I see it clearly, but I felt it. And where it touched, I felt a slight fire spread inside me, a warmth that seemed to reorganize everything inside. Lungs, heartbeat, consciousness. And along with that touch, a phrase appeared clearly inside my head. It's not your time. Your mission is not over. I did not hear it with my ears, but I listened with my heart. In that moment, without even understanding how, my lungs filled with air that was not from the river. I felt it come from another place, As if heaven had breathed life into me again. Strength returned. Not completely, but enough to make me feel that I was still there. And then, slowly, I began to rise. Not by my own strength. Of that I am sure. It was as if something was gently pushing me toward the surface. When I broke the water, the daylight seemed different. It was as if I had been born again. The first thing I felt when I got out of the water was the air cutting my throat. My lungs burned, but they drew in air as if desperate for life. I coughed, spat out water, tried to figure out if I was really still alive. I couldn't move my arms much, but I managed to keep my face out of the water. The river was still flowing strongly, but it didn't drag me away as before. It was as if some invisible thing was keeping me there, afloat. I looked around, searching for any sign of help, and that's when I heard it. A noise different from the water. An engine. Low, irregular, but approaching. I turned my head with difficulty and saw a boat. Two figures, one standing with a hand over his forehead to see better, the other piloting slowly. They saw me. One of them shouted something I didn't understand at the time, but I saw the astonishment on the face of the one standing. It was Juan, a fisherman I knew from the parish. The boat approached quickly. They were shouting my name. "Father Tomas! My God! It's the Father!" I wanted to answer, but nothing came out. Only a faint moan. When they got close enough, I felt their hands pulling me by the arms. It was a brute force, and at the same time careful. They laid me down inside the boat, and I lay there on my back, feeling every cell of my body complain with pain and cold. But there was something else, a strange peace, as if the danger had passed. Juan looked at me with wide eyes, and the other fisherman, younger, seemed to be in shock. "Father, there was a light. We saw it," he said, his voice trembling. "When we got close, there was a white light in the water, right around you. It wasn't normal." I could only whisper a sentence with the little air I had. It was her, the mother. She pulled me out of there. They didn't say anything, but they both looked at each other and made the sign of the cross. The journey back was silent. All that could be heard was the noise of the engine and the waves beating against the wood of the boat. I was covered with an old blanket they found right there. Still wet, trembling, but whole and conscious. It was strange to think about it. I had been thrown from a bridge. I had sunk into that treacherous river. And yet, I was there, alive, breathing, remembering everything. When we got close to the bank, there were some people at the small makeshift pier. A woman saw me first and shouted, "It's the Father! He's alive!" In seconds, the place was full. People crying, others making the sign of the cross, frightened children holding on to their mother's arms. They carried me to a pickup truck. I felt every jolt, every pothole in the road, as if everything was confirming to me, "You are here. This is happening." In the hospital, the white lights blinded me. After the cloudy sky and the dark river, that environment seemed like another world. They put me on a stretcher, covered my body with wires and devices, and spoke words I didn't quite understand. A young nurse leaned over me and asked softly, "Father, what happened?" I could barely speak, but I replied, "The Virgin, she saved me." She didn't say anything at the time. She just held my hand. Hours later, one of the doctors, serious and skeptical, muttered while looking at the exams, "This doesn't make sense. He shouldn't be like this. Not at this age. Not with the time he was submerged." When I heard that, I closed my eyes and smiled inside. I knew They couldn't explain with devices or charts what had happened because it hadn't come from Earth. Medicine could take care of my body, but the one who took care of my soul that day was heaven. I stayed in the hospital for a few days. My body still craved rest, but my spirit was restless. I knew I couldn't keep that to myself. When I was discharged, I imagined I would return home in silence, but as I walked out the main door of the hospital, I saw a crowd. I stopped. I didn't know how to react. There were people with flowers, children with signs, women with raised rosaries. They shouted my name, cried, applauded, and at that moment, something squeezed inside me. Not because I saw myself as someone special, but because I knew those people were not applauding an old priest. They were applauding a miracle. I raised my rosary and could only say, "Don't look at me. Look at her. It was she who did not forget us." And there, in front of that hospital, I understood that my life had changed. This was not going to pass as a scare story. It was just the beginning. When I returned to the church days later, I entered slowly. The walls were there, the same way. The candles, the pews, everything as always. But my heart was different. I went to the side altar, where the image of the Virgin is. I knelt with difficulty, rested my forehead on the cold marble, and spoke in silence. "Mother, I don't know why you chose me, but if you gave me life again, it's because you want me to say what I saw." At that instant, I felt that peace that only those who have truly prayed know. I got up with the sacristan's help, and he told me, "Father, the church is full. Everyone wants to hear you." I went up to the altar with shaky legs, not from fear, but from emotion. When I looked at the church, I saw new faces, people I had never seen at Mass. Young people, adults, even people who avoided me before, all with their eyes fixed on me, and I knew it was time to tell. I took the microphone with my still somewhat weak hands. I took a deep breath, and I spoke like someone who had nothing left to hide. Brothers and sisters, I am not here to repeat what has already been in the newspapers. I am here to say what I lived. Yes, they threw me from a bridge. Yes, I sank into that river. Yes, I thought I was going to die, but I was not alone. A heavy silence took over the church. I saw some people getting emotional in the very first minutes. I continued. Down there, when there was no more air, no strength, no light, she appeared. The Mother. Not as a statue, not as a painting, but alive, with a blue mantle that illuminated the dirty water. She touched me. She told me my mission was not over, and she brought me back. I didn't need to prove anything. I didn't show wounds or medical reports. I just told what happened, and at that moment, everyone understood. It was true. Some people cried. Others closed their eyes as if they were reliving something. I spoke for about 20 minutes, without a script, without paper, just with the memory of what I lived. When I finished, I asked everyone to stand up and pray a rosary with me. And there, in that simple neighborhood church, I heard the most beautiful sound of my life. Hundreds of voices saying together, "Hail Mary, full of grace," as if every word weighed more, as if every bead of the rosary was now a chain between heaven and those people. After that, my life turned upside down. People came from afar, pilgrims, curious people, journalists, but I never accepted them calling it the priest's miracle. I always corrected, no, it's the Mother's miracle, because it was she who descended to my bottom. And I was just the old man who grabbed that mantle with his heart. Some time later, something I never expected happened. One of the men who was in the truck that day Not the leader, but the one who held my arm, appeared in the sacristy. Miguel, the sacristan, came in with a pale face and said, "Father, there's a man outside. He didn't say his name, but I think you should see him." When he entered, I recognized him right away. He had a dejected face, unshaven, red eyes. He stood there, still, as if he didn't know whether to come in or go out. Then he said, "If you want me to leave, I will. I just needed to see you." I asked him to sit down. He hesitated, then sat. He was silent for a few seconds, until, with a choked voice, he said, "I was a coward. I was there. I could have said no, but I kept quiet. And since that day, I haven't slept properly." He started to cry. It wasn't a beautiful, contained cry. It was ugly, torn, like someone breaking inside. And I felt no anger. None. What I felt was compassion. He told me that, as they drove away from the bridge that day, he looked back and saw a light in the water. He thought it was the sun's reflection, but the sky was cloudy. And since then, that image had not left his mind. "I don't know how to pray, Father," he said, "but I came because I couldn't bear this weight anymore." I put my hand on his shoulder and said, "You don't need to know how to pray. You just need to open your heart." And there, in the damp sacristy, smelling of extinguished candles, we prayed together. It was the simplest and most genuine prayer I have ever made with anyone. He repeated my words, his voice thick with emotion. "Mother, if you saved him, save my soul too." That afternoon, after he left, I sat alone in the chapel for a while. The church was empty, only with the sound of sparrows in the high stained-glass windows and the smell of incense still lingering in the air. I looked at the image of the Virgin next to the altar, thinking about everything that had happened, and I realized something that profoundly marked me. The true miracle was not just my survival from that fall. It was this man having returned. It was his soul having broken enough to allow the light to enter. Since then, other people have also come to talk to me. People who had never set foot in the church before. Men who cried in secret. Young people who said they wanted to know this mother who saved me. A young woman told me that, after hearing my testimony, she started praying the rosary again with her grandmother. A young man told me that he went to confession for the first time in 10 years. I saw hardened hearts opening, and I understood that what happened at the bottom of that river was not just for me. It was for all of us. It's just that not all those involved came. I never saw the other 2 men who were in the truck again. Sometimes I wonder where they are, what they are doing, if they remember that night. But I stopped waiting. Every time I celebrate Mass, I silently place their names on the altar. I pray for them, even without knowing if they are still alive. I say, "Lord, they threw me into the waters, but you pulled me out. Forgive them, and may your mother go where I cannot go." Because that's it. There are places where we cannot reach with words, but she reaches with presence. I don't need to see them again to know that something stayed with them. The light in the river, the silence of the fall, the prayer I began to pray before sinking, all of that remained there, marked, even if they never confess. Since that day, everything has changed. I am still the same old priest, with the same slow steps, the same worn cassock, and the same weak coffee in the parish kitchen. But something inside me is no longer the same. Every homily carries more weight. Every confession seems more urgent. And every face that seeks me out carries a glow I hadn't seen before. People started coming from afar, from other neighborhoods, from other cities. Sometimes they arrive barefoot. Other times with rosaries tied around their wrists. They don't want to see me. They want to see the simple image of the Virgin that stands next to the altar. I sit there, in the confessional, listening to stories that break me inside. People who abandoned the faith and returned. People who never believed in anything and now cannot go a day without praying. Not because of me, but because of what happened in that river. One day, an elderly woman with white hair knelt before me and said, "Father, I have cancer. But since I learned that the mother pulled you from death, I sleep in peace, because I know she is also with me." And I cried with her, in silence, because there I understood that the miracle spread, and it continues to spread. And sometimes I wonder why. Why me? Why that day? Why in that river? But the answer always comes the same way. It is not about me. It never was. It's about her. It's about him. I was just the man who fell from the bridge and was rescued by love. The rest is up to them. I only tell what I saw, what I felt, what I still cannot explain, and what, even as time passes, still leaves me speechless every time I remember that blue light, shining in the middle of the dark water. There are days when I still wake up with my body aching. My joints are no longer the same, and the cold visits me with more force since that forced dive. Sometimes, looking in the mirror, I see the marks of time, the wrinkled face, the tired eyes. But even so, every time I pick up the rosary and start to pray, that same peace returns. It doesn't matter where I am, in the sacristy, on the park bench, in the hospital, on a bus. Whenever I close my eyes, it is as if I return there, to that instant at the bottom of the river. And not because of fear, but because of everything I felt. For the certainty that, even in the darkest places, someone can descend to you. Someone can find you when no one else can. With every Mass, every meeting, every testimony I give, I ask for the same thing in silence. May they not just hear my voice, may they listen to hers. Because she is still speaking, she is still calling, and I am just a fragile echo, trying to faithfully repeat what I saw. I have been invited to tell this story on television, at events, even outside the country. But I always refuse when I realize they want to make a spectacle, because this was not a spectacle. It was real. It was dirty. It was hard. It was painful. And it was holy. There is nothing beautiful about being thrown from a bridge. The beautiful thing is what comes after. It is what grace builds from the pieces. What moves me the most, even today, are those who stop me on the street and say, "Father, I also fell into a river, not of water, but of sin." When I hear that, my heart tightens, because I understand. I know what it's like to feel there's no more air, that no one will save you. But I also know that sometimes, right at that moment, something or someone descends to you. And when that presence touches your chest, everything changes. It's not about seeing with your eyes. It's about knowing, deep down, that you are not alone, and that the Mother continues to descend to our dark depths whenever someone calls. What I lived has no explanation. I don't know why it happened that way. There was no voice from heaven or bright flashes. It was silence. It was water. It was light. And then, more silence. Simple as that. Even today, I can't explain why that light stopped there, why she pulled me out, why I came back. But if there's one thing I'm sure of, it's this. That day, I touched death. And when all seemed lost, the Mother rescued me. And now, as long as I still have breath, I will repeat this story to whoever wants to listen, because it was real, and no one will convince me otherwise. If there's one thing this story taught me, it's that we are never alone. Even in the darkest moments, even when all seems lost, grace can reach us. What I lived at the bottom of that river was not just a deliverance, it was a calling. A reminder that there is love, there is forgiveness, and there is purpose. And now I ask you, have you ever experienced something that made you feel that you were not alone? Have you had an experience that marked you in a way that no one would believe? Share it here in the comments. I really want to know where you are following us from and what this story spoke to your heart. If this message touched you, subscribe to the channel now and hit the bell so you don't miss any of the next testimonies we'll be bringing. And if you want to support this work in some way, but don't know how, click the Join button down here. It's simple, and your help makes all the difference so that these stories continue to reach those who need them. And don't leave now, because the next video is about to appear on the screen here. And I guarantee you, it can also transform your day. God bless you. And the Mother, may she always accompany you. Until next time.